1.
Our next guest is the pride of Niskuna, the pride of homestead farming, the one and only Frank Popolizio.
How are you guys?
Frank, looks like you got a book.
Very studious. What are you in a library? Where are you?
I gotta keep up with you, dude. I gotta keep up. That's the only way I can do it.
All right.
Gotta look smart.
You look like something right now. We know that you're smart. Smart isn't as smart does, and you do a lot. So we know that you're smart, but I wasn't expecting a library behind you.
I need that. I actually need that sweater from you. That's what I want
that
right
is a
there.
nice sweater.
I think I could use that thing on the farm a little bit. That thing, it looks insulated.
It's comfortable.
So obviously we had a lot of wrestling related questions, but you know what people want to know down here in Long Island. You know, we have homestead farming. How big is this farm? Is it a real working farm? What kind of animals? Tell us about the farm.
It's not that big. We only have about 6 acres here, but I got another 100 acres near Duanesburg, where Gwizdowski, his neck of the woods.
Yep, of course.
But the lion's share of the work happens here. It's small. I only got about 10 head of cattle. We do some hemp here where we grow CBD.
Yeah,
and I'm actually
that's legal.
Completely legal.
Frankie Pop, look, there's a ton of wrestling stuff we could talk all day, but everyone on Long Island, people around the country, they want to know about Homestead Farm. Tell me about the farm.
So I raised some turkeys, I raised some cattle, I raised some CBD, actually raising some chickens called Samanis. They're completely black inside and out, and we're doing a little bit of everything with that. So I like it. It's pretty fun.
What folk hero? I mean, you know, like if I go into my own, you know, deep recesses of my mind, I'm thinking that I want to live like Kerouac. What are you trying to be, Teddy Roosevelt? Is this what you're trying to do? Like, are you writing your own memoir? You are like, a man's man. You are
I'm trying to be Mike Torriero. That's what I want to be.
I don't know, man. I'm going to talk to you offline. If that's your dream, we need to
I'll tell you what,
man. To bring it back, bro.
I like Mike's one of my favorite guys. I don't talk to him nearly enough, but he is the man. And he's probably more man than he gives himself credit to be. I think he could hang just fine on the farm.
Well, we talk to you all the time, and because of that answer, I want the listener at home to know that the reason he does not return my calls is because I constantly needle him about running for public office.
I don't know. He returns my calls. He runs my texts anytime I text him. I don't know, Mike.
I just don't have. I know, like, if I'm going to talk to Mike, I have to have the time to do it right. And half the time of my life, I'm running ragged. That's the bigger problem. But
all right,
So anyway, we're going to wrap a little bit here. Look, so first off, let's get right into it, right? What do you think? Obviously, we made it through this COVID situation. We're going to have an abbreviated season. You know, there's a ton of things to talk about. What do you think about kind of the current state of affairs? We'll talk about New York State and wrestling, you know, and the season. You know, what's your couple of sound bites?
Well, I'm a little bit concerned. Obviously, there's a lot of things to be concerned about, but the state that we're in at this point isn't really. It looks like Long Island is the most organized out of anybody.
Well, then we're in big trouble.
And we are. I'm not, all kidding aside, when we are, but you know, I know this. I know that there's wrestling going on in February. I know that there's wrestling going on in April, and I know there's going to be wrestling going on in May. And although that may sound good, that shows how disorganized the effort is. And what other sport out of the Scholastic, you know, family is spread out over 3 different months? I think the answer is just wrestling. And when we start getting peeled away into our own subcategory, I'm a little alarmed by that. And more importantly, what's the long-term impact of that we're identified as a subspecies? So, you know,
I have to say, I mean, I want to see wrestling back just as much as the next guy, but you know, stepping out of the fishbowl, the reason that I'm so excited to have you on and for people to hear more about what you are doing as a man, what you are doing as a leader in the sport of wrestling, is that you aren't waiting for big government to come in and tell you how you can go ahead and fulfill your passion. The opportunity to wrestle in college is directly correlated with your ability to wrestle well and compete at Fargo. That's proven time in and time out. I'd like to hear more about what you'd like to see from the freestyle state directors, from other wrestling people around the state, the country, and the tri-state area that would help strengthen what you're doing and strengthen wrestling away from the schools. Because if we sit and talk about what the schools are going to do any longer, we're just going to be cursing the dark instead of lighting the candle. So, what do you think needs to get done away from the public school system, from people in wrestling, that can help strengthen our sport along the lines of what you're doing to help us?
You are 100% correct. I think if we wait and assume that help is on its way, with the school, if we put our invest in just the school, I think you're pissing in the wind, and that's the truth. We have to lead the way, and lead the way is going to be, it may be different way of doing things. It may be, today we talked about doing Zoom while we're in the club with college coaches so that they can actually see the athletes practicing.
American ingenuity, Mike Metrano.
Yeah.
American
Pop is the
ingenuity.
epitome of American. Yeah,
we
sure.
have an
Talk about solutions.
We have an 85-inch monitor in our club. We have 5G Wi-Fi. We're setting that up. We're setting that up. That has to be some of the stuff that we're doing. We're doing small duels right in the facility so that it can be mitigated if there's any kind of concern for COVID or whatever it is. It's something that can be controlled, just a team versus a team, but it's high end and you can feed your guys the level that they need. Look, you have to get uncomfortable, and it is uncomfortable. Like, I didn't want to go spend $50,000 on rehabbing a facility, but you got to do it. We did it. We're no longer dependent on schools, to be able to say, hey, you can't practice now, or you're out of here, or this, that. So now we have your own place, and you're in charge of your own destiny.
Right. And now, so do you think that there's more of that going on? Are you available to speak to coaches and other leaders throughout, Long Island, the state of New York, the tri-state area, and the country, to talk about what things they have to look out for to be able to ensure that they are saving wrestling and we're not waiting for, others to come in and do the dirty work?
Wrestling, a sport measured by technique, mental toughness, discipline, and persistence. But it also brings children with all skill levels interested in the sport in droves when there's great coaching. Team Purcell Training Center in Iowa is at the epicenter of great wrestling. Being one of the best youth clubs in the Midwest, the center has a deep understanding for community and wellness. At the top of their game, they may be in Iowa, but they have nationwide appeal and a national model for success. Run by U.S. Veterans National Champion Anthony Purcell, Purcell's vision and mission of the center is to build children from the ground up with their wellness in mind. To Purcell, it doesn't matter if the children are novice wrestlers or state champions. His goal is to build character, create a positive, nurturing, and spirited environment, and to produce respectful ambassadors in his community. The training center benefits people from all ages, ranging from the average fitness workout to mixed martial arts, specialized youth training, and self-defense. Purcell Training Center, where excellence is the standard.
So here's the thing, recently I was outspoken about the fact that, the sport has kind of been discriminated against in a way. That's what we're talking about here. And, there wasn't too much support from colleagues and people that are in the coaching ranks. I'd imagine that there's some pressure coming from administrators that they don't want to hear that there is pressure against these ideas or conflicting ideas, I should say. And you're almost like trying to silence the truth. And I have a problem with that. So right now, I may not be the most popular guy that's out there, but I think you got to speak up. I think you have to have a voice in it. Otherwise, we're in this situation for a reason. It's not by accident. You get what you deserve, right? And I'm not saying that we haven't had strong leadership or that there aren't strong leaders, but after a while, it's not by accident that we're looked at differently. We're put into a subcategory. I find that alarming. When I was growing up, you had an Italian name, you wore a gold chain, you had black hair. People would say, "Hey, you're in the mafia." And it was such an ignorant, pigeon brain statement to make.
Mm-hmm.
But are we doing the same exact thing when you just look at somebody wrestling and you're saying, "Hey, that's the most dangerous thing you could physically do"? That's it. That's separate. That's more dangerous than basketball or hockey or cheerleading or whatever sport you want to categorize in. And I just can't believe that we're at that level. So I've become outspoken about that. And I'm not sure I made some friends by doing that.
Well, Coach, there's a number of things that I think you were outspoken on, and whether it was the dual meet state tournament. Obviously you brought together, we'll call it a state tournament, an unofficial official state tournament, which we're going to get into. But something I want to expand upon is, what do you say to those that now that you guys are we're creating opportunities away from the school? Obviously you run one of the most successful clubs in America. Do you believe that the model, certainly in the United States, is going to go more towards the kind of the European Asian model, where it's more club-based than school-based? Do you see that wrestling in 5 years or 10 years is going to be more associated to the club and less to school? Where do you see that going?
I would hope not. I'm a scholastic guy by nature, right? My background was really developed with Coach Benna, wrestling for Niskayuna, and being a part of that. I was never even that good of a wrestling guy. I really wasn't as an athlete, right? But my memories and my experiences have been unbelievable in the scholastic world. And I think of my own son and the people that,
Luca, right?
I have.
Luca, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Luca. Yep. That's exactly right. Right. I'm looking to give him some kind of experience like that. Not everyone's going to be a world beater, right? So the scholastic environment sometimes is completely different than the club environment. Although I make a living in the club world, I'm partial to scholastic activities, and I think they're important. I would hope that we have the ability to straighten the ship, and I do think we have to do some things to do that. And I think once you start, there's things like, hey, if you go to, I saw this when we were dealing with our tournament in November, where in New Jersey, an athlete that came to our tournament would have been held out of their scholastic season in New Jersey. Well, you start squeezing like that, or bullying, really, people start having to make choices. And sometimes it's not going to end up like you think it's going to end up. And they may go the other way. They may go to the club scene. And I just, I think we got to be careful about those kind of moves. Look, you can see it's happening more and more. Guys are not finishing out their tenure scholastically. Yanni, he went and focused on what he needed to focus on, right? And you can't blame him. But the better guys are even looking at it, saying, I've accomplished what I've needed out of this. And then they move on to something else. I'd like to still maintain that. I'd like to have the scholastic part of it. I'm partial with that.
Sure.
But you may be right. We may be heading that way, and this may put it on this may have expedited it with the pandemic.
And I think you guys look at Pico and Cejudo. The other thing is, you talk about not leaving athletes out. I'm sure there are others, but I know that you were a proponent, at least I believe that you were a big proponent of making, we'll call it the 98-pound weight class, it's changed to 102, and the 285-pound weight class requisite in dual meets, right? And
Yes.
tell me your position on that, and kind of where even in Long Island, teams have full rosters. We'd open up the newspaper or go on longislandwrestling.com, forfeit at 98, forfeit at 285. I could think of at ISEP, there was a wrestler named Christian Wintons. I don't know. Let's say he had 15 matches throughout the whole year, because, people forfeited or they didn't have guys. And then when he got to the state tournament, I felt like he, and again, he was, I believe, all state. I think he was 4th or 5th in the state, but I don't know if he was prepared, right? So tell me about that. What's your position on that?
Well, first of all, I come from the lineage of Joe Benna.
Right.
And Joe Benna was a guy that was all about being inclusive. He believed that there was room for everybody, from the guys that couldn't tie their shoe to the guys that were world medalists, right? And we lived in that environment. We never cut a guy, and we always had a home for every single walk of life. And his thing was make it so their tenure, they had longevity in that tenure, right? That they would wrestle for 4 years, 5 years, right through that whole duration. And by the time they were done, they were 20 match winning guys. The worst guy in the bunch would still get 20 wins. So I come from that mentality, and I believe that you try to be inclusive. Now, that being said, you start cutting weight classes, or you get rid of weight classes, you start giving away opportunities, and you can't really get them back. It's very hard to add something once you've given it away. And I think about how many great people have started off really, really light, and then have progressed throughout their career. And I think if you look at that, 99 in New York State had some of the best wrestlers at one point come through that. And I'd hate to delay their time to have in the sun, if you would. And so
would that go backwards, though, to, is that an opportunity for the school programs to get strengthened like Pennsylvania does with their junior high program? If we're eliminating that 99-pound weight class, do you think that it will force more kids to stay back at that junior high level?
Yeah,
and
but show me that we're doing that. Show me that we're doing that. There's no plan in place at all. That, here you are as a guy on the outside looking in, and you can see the value in doing that. And there is real value, because then it doesn't force 7th and 8th graders to have to make a move out of that environment or go into the varsity environment where they can stay back.
On the record, are you for having, if you were able to make a rule, you're the chancellor in arms, you're able to make the decisions, would you decide to allow 7th and 8th graders to wrestle varsity, or would you prefer that there was a line drawn in the sand and that there was a junior high program that turned competitive for all schools?
Well, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. If there was the program in place,
again, this is why I call you to run for office. You got a big opinion, and you don't want to give a straight answer. Okay, continue.
I'm being straight with it right
He's
now.
He's going to give us a straight answer. Let's let him.
Right now, leave it. Yeah. 7th and 8th graders, leave it. But until you fix the problem is that, what are guys doing at a modified level? It's, come on, right? There needs to be a program in place where these younger guys can get pushed and actually have a real legitimate season. I don't think that's happening, at least on a modified level, in any capacity.
You look at, again, talking about New York State, the middle school program. It's not that coaches aren't working, but the middle school program compared to, say, the PJW program, right, in Pennsylvania, it's not analogous at all. Something else I want to talk to you about is, look, we got our butt kicked probably by you more than a couple of times at the UE duels. I love the UE duel tournament, but
I don't remember.
But
nobody remembers except for Mike.
Yeah. No, but again, I love that tournament. It was one of my favorite tournaments, to be honest, in terms of the history. Mm-hmm. But you know what? And I've had multiple conversations with you about it. It was a unofficial, subjective state tournament, right? Yeah. And again, I think that, again, others, but you were an ardent supporter of, an official New York State dual meet tournament, both at Division I and Division II level. And we look around the country, up until a few years ago, New York didn't have it, right? A lot of the other top states did. What was your position on that?
I 100% was an advocate of an official dual meet state championship. Not that I didn't like the UE duels. I thought it was an outstanding competition.
Yeah, they have
And
a
it was
freshman
exciting.
scene. It was unbelievable, by the way.
Yeah,
Just
it
for
was
the record.
unbelievable. I mean,
It was unbelievable.
it was an intimate environment,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was intense. It was actually awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
But
Yeah.
in the end, it was like, it's not real. You know, like it wasn't official. Not that we didn't feel it felt real, but
Some battles for sure.
the state didn't, you know, they didn't recognize it. And other, you know, the national rankings didn't recognize it as such. So I think it was important to have that legitimacy, if you would, and I use that, you know, lightly, but it was pretty legit. But I just felt like, hey, why aren't we taking this next step and having it? And I think it's proven to be, it looks pretty successful with the state-wise. You know, they've embraced it now, all in. So
For sure.
It's a better situation.
So
That's my,
Frank,
feeling of it.
You speak about inclusivity, and you know, you are a leader. You know, you're a trailblazer in our sport. There's no question about it. You've brought wrestling to the capital region of New York. You've organized colleges to interact and compete that never have. I mean, it's you're in the Hall of Fame, I believe, you know, for a reason. You know, what is going on with Journeyman Wrestling and women's and girls programming? Do you have many girls in there? Do you have separate practices? You know, what are you doing in terms of women's divisions with girls wrestling? I know that it's been a bear to really get that momentum going for women's wrestling, but we're in a place now where that ball seems like it's kind of rolling on its own now. So talk a little bit about specifically what you're doing both inside the club and the events for women and girls.
Yeah. So for the state championships, right, we're doing the New York State Championship on April 2nd and 3rd. On the 3rd, we're having also a freestyle event, right? So the tournament will end the morning of April 3rd, and then there'll be a 30-minute break, and we'll start up on our freestyle endeavor, and that'll be more of a national scope. And the first thing we were sure to add was a girls division. And quite frankly, I'm learning, right, that it is, as much as it is part of our fabric in the overall sport, they have their own culture as well. And when you leave something out or something that they're accustomed to that isn't, you know, laid out the way they expect it to, they let me know. They were very outspoken to what they were looking for and what they needed. And I appreciate that, right? Because I'm trying to build a product that they all want to be a part of. Things like using national showcase instead of championship bothered a few of them, right? I don't know if that would be the same in the boys side of it. And maybe I didn't even think about it, right? And so little teeny things like that may be just a little bit culturally different. And you learn as you go what they're looking for. I missed the weight class that they wanted to have in there. They let me know about it. Things of that nature. So I'm trying to do more to add in the girls. Our club, on the club side of it, we've had unbelievable success. We've had world medalists on the girls scene, right?
That's right.
And one of the things we never really did is we didn't isolate them. We mixed them in as part of the group, and we didn't treat them differently or have separate practices. We just put them in together. We still do that. And we probably we started getting momentum before the pandemic, and then that kind of crushed things a little bit on an effort of recruiting, getting girls out there. Right now, Joe Usolini is doing a great job.
Great job. At Kirby, right?
Yep. He's and although he's a competitor of mine locally, he deserves credit, right? He's doing some heavy lifting with the girls, and we're trying to do the same thing. You know, we're trying to get girls in here, and we've proven that you can win, right? At the world level, literally the world level. And we're not even talking about state or, you know, national. You can do it. You can be from here. You can be from Scholastic, New York, Clifton Park, New York, and win. So there's a lot of opportunity. We do a lot with Coach Liuzzi out of Italy, who's on the national coaching staff for Italy on the women's side. So there's a, bringing him in gives us some tips on, how to maybe inspire the girls a little, or it's going to be a little bit different than some of the things that you're doing with the boys and vice versa. But, from a scrapping standpoint, we don't isolate. We put them together, and that may be tough in the beginning, but overall, I think it helps.
Coach, you bring up Italy and some of the other events, right? You've coordinated. Your brother's obviously the head coach at Penn State. You've coordinated a dual meet in Italy. You have a true international level, school age-based tournament. High school-based kids from around the world. Right. You've created, we'll call it unofficial state tournament. What's something that you're most proud of, an event or something that you felt like you made your mark on? What's the thing you're most proud of?
The international front. I am really super adamant. I'm passionate about it. I love the international experience, and from going as a team leader or a coach to bringing the athletes here. We have one of the only high school freestyle international tournaments for the United States. It's something that I've worked really hard on, and it's complicated with visas and just coordinating it. Logistically, it's difficult, but the last time we pulled it off, we had 22 countries here, 135 foreigners. That's a
Amazing.
pretty steep lift, or heavy lift. And I had momentum with that, and you need momentum. Actually, it was more popular in the world than it was in the United States. So although I'm proud of it, we had work to do. I failed to make it more relevant in the United States. It was I went to the World Championships, and the guys were getting on the podium and they were wearing Journeymen shirts, and they weren't from the United States. And that was an awesome feeling. Obviously they put their country jackets on, but their warm-up shirt was something that they were proud of, wrestling here. So I knew we kind of arrived at that point. But I think there's a lot of growing that we could do.
Frank, one question before we let you go, and if we don't let you go, you'll definitely never pick up my phone call again, right, Mike? What is the single best piece of advice you've been given or you provide to your student athletes, your kids, your wife? Just in a couple of sentences, what's your life mantra that you either live by or you provide as a piece of advice?
That's a great question. I live by, you got to be first, best, or different. Every day I try to be the guy first, the best, or a little bit different. And it's a quote that really resonates with me. I take that, and I also try to be sincere, fair, not squirrely at all in anything I do. You try to be straightforward. And I think it's important. I really do. But when you get up in the morning, you got to go after it. You got to go after it. And I don't care how big or crazy the idea may seem. The first thing today, I get up and I see that the D3s were canceled.
Yep.
I was all over it. Can I do it? Can I be the guy to fill the gap right now? I want to, and that sounds crazy. That's a big lift, right? But, the good news was that there were two other people that were first. I wasn't first. Right. And I actually said that. Good. I don't have to do it. Somebody else is going to do it, but they were first. They were ready. They were planning before it happened, and they knew it was going to happen. So to lead back to Mike's question, I think, if you have that mentality, first, best, or different, you're in the fight somewhere on almost anything that you want to be in. And so that was a good question.
And last question, Coach, before we let you go. Look, I know that Coach Benna, we've talked about it offline over the years. What's the single thing that you kind of glean from Coach Benna? Obviously, he's one of the winningest coaches in the state. So, so much success. When you think back, you talked about being inclusive. When you think back, to Niskuna days, Coach Bennett, what do you think about the most?
I always think about the experience I had there. Coach Bennett wasn't really a wrestling superstar, right? It wasn't like he had the best technique or, a strategist that was unbelievable. It wasn't anything like that. He could relate to people. He could relate to people that were 30, 40 years younger than him and people that were 40 years older than him and everybody in between. Gwiazdowski felt like he was a friend to Coach Bennett, right? And look at the age difference there. And I had the same relationship with Bennett, and I'm 30 years, 25 years older than Gwiazdowski or whatever I am, and then there was people that were older than me that felt the same way that they had with Bennett. So his ability to relate to people and make them feel special and engaged and a part of the process, he was gifted. And I honestly believe that it didn't matter if it was wrestling. It could have been volleyball or gymnastics. He would have been equally as good of a coach in that. He was great at just coaching people and believing in themselves. He was fantastic. The best I've ever been around.
Well, Coach, I like listening. You talk about him. I mean, your face just lights up. He was an amazing man. And you start doing math, you're going to get Mike nervous. You start trying to calculate ages. His brain calculator doesn't really work too well, as you probably know. But again, Frank Popolizio, Journeymen Wrestling. We appreciate your time. We'll be following you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.